This is Vergil's Aeneid, translated into English by Robert Fitzgerald. Book 11. When dawn came up from ocean in the east, though Pallas's death had left Aeneas shaken, and duty pressed him to give time for burial of the dead, he first in early light discharged his ritual vows as victor to the gods. A big oak trunk lopped of its boughs he planted on a mound and dressed it with Mezentius's bright gear to make a trophy, god of war, to thee. He fitted it with a crest still oozing blood, with javelins of the warrior and his cuirass 12 times cut and breached. On the left side he tied the bronze shield, and he slung the ivory scabbard and sword around the figure's neck. Then he addressed the officers who thronged about him in elation. One great mission stands accomplished, men. For what remains? Let all our fears depart from us. I stripped these arms from a proud king, my offering now, first trophy in the war. Mezentius, become this figure at my hands. The road before us leads to the Latin town, and king, look to your gear and courage. Think ahead with good cheer of the war to come, and when by will of the high gods our flag is raised, our troops led from the camp, nothing amiss or unforeseen will cumber or delay us. No heavy-heartedness will slow us down. Meanwhile, let us give over to the earth our friends' unburied bodies, the one honor possible for them now in Acheron. Go, he continued, and make beautiful the funeral rites for these heroic souls who won this land for us. Let Pallas first be sent to Evander's grieving town. He lacked no valor when the black day took him off and sank him in death's bitterness. He wept as he said this, then made his way again to his own threshold, where the corpse of Pallas lay in care of old Acoetes, once Arcadian Evander's armor-bearer, chosen under less happy auspices to be companion of a cherished ward. Their household stood around, with men of Troy and Trojan women, hair unbound in mourning. Then, as Aeneas entered the tall doorway, everyone there groaned mightily to heaven, beating their breasts. The prince's lodge rang out with sobs and lamentation. When he saw the head at rest, the snow-white face of Pallas, the smooth chest and the open wound the Ausonian spearhead made, his tears welled up with grim words. Was it you, poor boy, that fortune would not let me keep when she came smiling? You who were not to see our kingdom won, or ride in victory to your father's house? This was not the pledge I made Evander on your behalf on leaving him when he embraced me and gave Godspeed to my quest for country-wide command. Anxiously, too, he warned of battle with a rugged race, with savage fighting men. Even at this hour, prey to false hope, he may be making vows and heaping altars with his gifts, while here we gather with a soldier, young and dead, who owes no vows to heaven any longer. Here is our helpless ritual and our sorrow. Father ill-fated, you will see his funeral. Can this be our return, our longed-for triumph, This, my great pledge carried out? Enough, Evander. You will see no shameful wound of one who ran hit from behind. You'll pray for no hard death because a son lives on disgraced. What a defense Ausonia lost, and you too, Iulus. Having wept his fill, he had the forlorn body taken up for journeying, and from the army chose 1,000 men to march as retinue at Pallas's funeral. These would take part in mourning with his father, for great pain, small consolation, but the poor king's due. Deft hands now made a pliant bier of wicker, arbutus shoots and oak twigs interwoven, shading the piled-up couch with screens of leaves. Here on his rustic bed they lay the prince, most like a flower or a girl's fingers plucked, soft-petaled violet or hyacinth, with languid head, as yet not discomposed or faded, though its mother earth no longer nourishes it and makes it stand in bloom. Aeneas brought 2 robes all stiff with gold embroidery and purple. Dido of Sidon herself had loved the toil of making these with her own hands one day for him, in weaving golden thread into the fabric. One of these the sorrowing man wrapped round the prince in final honor, and he spread the other, mantling the hair soon to be set aflame. He heaped the many prizes Pallas won in the Laurentine battle, to be borne in a long file, and added mounts and weapons taken in his own fights from the enemy. Then came, hands bound behind their backs, the prisoners he sent as offerings to the shades below, intending that when slain they should bedew the pyre's flames with blood. And he commanded officers themselves to carry trophies, tree trunks in foeman's gear, with names attached. Acoetes had to be led, far gone in age and misery, his breast stung by his blows, his cheeks torn by his nails. At times he fell, full length, flinging himself to earth. War cars they also led, a-glisten with Rutulian blood. The war-horse Aethon, bare of insignia, came behind, with big tears rolling down to wetten his cheeks. Then men who bore the spear and helm of Pallas, for his belt and sword, were held by Turnus the victorious. And now the whole sad column marched, the Trojans, all the Etruscans, the Arcadians, with arms reversed. When the long file had gone a distance on its way, Aeneas halted, sighed from the heart, and spoke a final word. More of the same drear destiny of battle calls me back to further tears. Forever hail to you, my noble friend, my Pallas. Hail, and farewell forever. That was all. Then he turned backward toward the parapets and made his way to camp. From the Latin city, spokesmen wearing chaplets of olive boughs had now arrived with a petition for him. Let him give back their dead, felled by the sword, who lay upon the field. Let him permit interment of them under an earthen mound. There was no combat with defeated men who breathed the air no longer. Let him spare them, hosts he called them once, and fathers-in-law. This request the good heart of Aeneas could not spurn, but granted, and he added, What unmerited misfortune, Latins, could have embroiled you in so sad a war, that now you turn your backs on us, your friends? Do you ask peace from me for those whose lives were taken by the cast of Mars? Believe me, I should have wished to grant it to the living. Never should I have come here had not fate allotted me this land for settlement. Nor do I war upon your people. No, your king dropped our alliance, lent himself instead to Turnus's fighting. In all fairness, Turnus should have faced death on this field. If he would end the war by force and drive the Trojans out, he should have fought me, fought my weapons. Then the one for whom great Mars, or his great sword, prevailed would have lived on. Go now, light fires beneath your wretched dead. He finished, and they stood stricken and still, turning their eyes to look at one another. Drances, an aging man, forever hostile to the young Turnus, whom he blamed and hated, spoke in reply. Great man by fame, and proven greater in warfare, Prince of Troy, how can I match your godly nobleness with praise? Shall I admire the just man first, or first his deeds of war? Surely ingratitude will take your generous words back to our city. Then, fortune willing, we shall see that you and King Latinus reunite. Let Turnus look for his own ally. Our happiness will be to raise your destined bulk of wall, and bear the stones of Troy upon our shoulders. To this the rest as one man spoke assent, and so they made a 12-day truce, while peace should hold between them, Teucrians and Latins, mingling without harm as they traversed the wooded ridges. Lofty ash trees rang with strokes of double-bladed axes, pines that towered starward toppled and came down, and men with wedges all day long split oak and fragrant cedar logs, or hauled the trunks of mountain ash on groaning wains. Rumor, already flown ahead inland, had heralded the mournful news. It filled Evander's ears, his house, his city walls. Rumor that only lately had reported Pallas victorious in Latium. Arcadians crowding to the gates by night took up the funeral torches custom called for. Flames whose glare in a long line moved out along the road between the fields. The Phrygian column came to meet and join that line of men lamenting. When the women saw them near the walls, they made the darkened town blaze up with wailing cries. As for Evander, nothing could hold him, but he took his way amid them all to where they set the bier, then threw himself on Pallas. Clinging there with tears and sobs, he barely spoke at last when pain abated. This you had not promised, Pallas, telling your father with what care you would go into action facing Mars. I knew how heady it could be to draw first blood, to taste the wine of victory in your first combat. Manhood's bitter gain, war's hard initiation, close at hand, my vows, my prayers unheard by any god. O blessed wife, so lucky in your death, not kept alive to suffer this. For my part, I have outlived my time to linger on. Survivor of my son, would God Rutulians had found me side by side with Trojan troops and pinned me to the earth with spears. I should have myself have given up my life. Would God this cortege brought me and not Pallas home. Not that I blame you or decry our compact Trojans, and our hands grip guest and host. This lot awaited me in my old age. But if my son had early death before him, I can rejoice that first he took the lives of countless Volscians, that he met his end, leading the Trojans into Latium. Besides, I could not wish a funeral more noble for you, Pallas, than this one Aeneas in his piety performs, with Phrygian leaders and Etruscan captains, all the Etruscan army, men to whom your sword-arm dealt out death are here as trophies, great ones. You too, Turnus, would stand here. A huge trunk hung with arms, had age and strength and seasoning of years matched him with you. But in my misery, why do I hold back the Trojans from the war? March on! Remember this, my message to your king. If I live out my hateful life now, Pallas gone, your sword arm keeps me, Turnus's life, the debt you see it owes to father as to son. In this alone your greatness and your fortune now have scope. I ask no joy in life I may not, but to take word to my son, far down amid the shades. Dawn at that hour brought on her kindly light for ill mankind, rousing men to labor and distress. By now, Aeneas and Tarchon had built up their pyres along the curving shore. On them, in the old-time ritual, each bore and placed the bodies of his men. The smoky fires caught underneath and hid the face of heaven in a tall gloom. Round pyres as they blaze, troops harnessed in bright armor marched 3 times in parade formation, and the cavalry swept about the sad cremation flame 3 times, while calling out their desolate cries. Tears fell upon the ground, fell upon armor. High in air rose the wild yells of men, the metal knell of trumpets. There were some who hurled gear taken from the Latin slain into the fire, helmets and ornate swords and reins and chariot wheels. Others tossed in gifts more familiar to the dead, their spears and shields which luck had not attended. On all sides death received burnt offerings of oxen, throats of swine were bled into the flames, with cattle commandeered from all the fields. Then over the whole shore they stood to see their fellow soldiers burning, and kept watch on pyres as they flared. Men could not be torn from this scene till dew-drenched night came on, and a night sky studded with fiery stars. The wretched Latins also in their quarter built countless pyres, and of their many dead they buried some, took some inland, or home into the city. All the rest they burned, heaped up in mammoth carnage, bodies jumbled, numberless and nameless, everywhere. Field strove with field in brightness of thick fires. A third day lightened heaven of cold and gloom before the mourners raked from the deep ash scattered bones and piled warm earth upon them. That day in the city within the walls of rich Latinus high-pitched wailing rose, the climax of long mourning. Mothers, brides bereft, and tender hearts of sisters grieving, orphaned boys, all curse the war, the marriage hope of Turnus. "Let him fight alone," they called, "and fight it out to a decision. He who demands kingship in Italy and highest honors for himself." Then Drances gave his weight to this, fiercely avowing Turnus alone was called to single combat. At the same time, many declared themselves in one way or another on Turnus' side. The queen's great name protected him, renown and trophies fairly won stood in his favor. Amid these hot exchanges, as the tumult reached its height, who should arrive in gloom? One more misfortune! But the emissaries back from Diomedes' city bearing his reply, and nothing had been gained by all their effort and expense. Their gifts, their gold, their long entreaties had not moved him. Latins must look elsewhere for reinforcement, or ask for peace terms from the Trojan prince. Now King Latinus at this grievous blow lost heart. He too, for the gods' anger shown in burial mounds before his eyes, had told him Aeneas came as one ordained, brought by palpable will of the unseen. Therefore he called together his high council, principal men of Latium in his court, and in all haste they came to the royal house through the full streets. Eldest among them, first in power of the scepter, grim in aspect, King Latinus took his chair, commanding those returned from the Aetolian town to tell their tale, their answers point by point. Silence being enjoined on all the rest, obediently Venulus began. "We have seen Diomedes, fellow townsmen, seen the Argive camp. We made the journey, won through all the dangers, gripped the hand that brought the realm of Ilium down. We saw him laying the foundations of his city, named Argyrippa for his father's race, in Iapix country, hard by Mount Garganus. When we were in the camp, with leave to speak before him, tendering our gifts, we told what name was ours, what fatherland, what enemy made war upon us, and what urgent cause drew us to Arpi. First he heard us out, then answered peaceably, "Fortunate race and realm of Saturn, men of old Ausonia, what happened to disturb your quiet life and make you rouse the unknown that is war?" "We, who did violence to the Ilian land with cold steel, and I now pass over pain endured in warfare under those high walls and soldiers the Simois there holds under, all of us have paid throughout the world, beyond belief, in suffering for our crimes. Priam himself might pity the lot of us. Witness Minerva's deadly star and storm, Euboean crags, vengeful decoying lights. Then too, after our conquest, driven far to strange landfalls, Menelaus Atrides tastes exile near the pillars of Proteus. Ulysses has beheld Aetnean Cyclops, Neoptolemus's realm. Shall I tell of that, and hearth gods of Idomeneus destroyed, of Locrians now displaced in Libya? Even that marshal of the great Achaeans, the Mycenaean, entering his home, met death at his unspeakable consort's hands. The adulterer lay in wait at Asia's fall. And must I add all that the gods denied me? Return to the altars of my fatherland, my longed-for wife, Calydon's loveliness? At this hour still, portents I dread to see pursue me. Lost companions, turned to birds, have taken to the air and roam the streams. What torture for my soldiers, as they fill the sea cliffs with their cries, their mewing cries. These punishments were all to be expected from that day when I so far lost my mind as to attack a being formed in heaven, wounding, defiling Venus's hand. No, no, invite me to no warfare such as this. Troy fallen, I have had no quarrel with the Trojans, no delight in calling up evil days. The gifts you bring me from your country, take instead to Aeneas. I have stood my ground against his whetted spear, fought him with swords. Trust one who knows the surging mass of him behind his shield, the whirlwind of his cast. Had Ida's land borne 2 more men like him, Troy would have marched upon the towers of Argos. Greece would be mourning a contrary fate. As to our stairmate before stubborn Troy, the sword arm of Aeneas with Hector's halted dominance of the Greeks for 10 long years. Both known for courage, both for skill in arms, Aeneas first in reverence for the gods. Your right hands and your forces should be joined, and well may be. Take care they do not clash in combat. Well, now your majesty has heard both Diomedes' responses and his views of our great war. Barely had the legates finished their story when a hubbub rose, and turbulence among the listening faces, as when rock beds that stem a rushing stream make the roiled current roar, and banks re-echo foam-lash of the waves. But soon the council's mood grew calm, excited tongues were stilled, and calling on the gods from his high throne, the king spoke out, "Much earlier than this I should have wished, and wiser it would have been, to meet and take decisions in this crisis, not with the enemy at our walls, as now. My countrymen, we make ill-omened war with men of heavenly birth, unconquerable, untired by battle, and even in defeat unable to put up the sword. What hope you had of brothers in arms, Aetolians, you must dismiss. Each man may have his own hope, but this, how narrow, now you see. Then, too, all that we had, now visited with ruin, lies before your eyes and in your hands. But I accuse no one. What bravery could do was done. The whole strength of our kingdom fought the battle. It is over. Now let me disclose the plan formed in my mind still tentatively. Give me your attention. I shall be brief. There is an old domain of mine along the Tuscan stream, extending far towards sundown, well beyond Sicanian boundaries. Aruncans and Rutulians sow crops there, plough the stony hills, or graze the wildest of them. Let this region all be ceded now in friendship to the Trojans, with a pine-forested zone of mountain heights. Let us make equitable treaty terms, and in the realm call them co-citizens. Here let them settle, and here build their walls, if such desire is in them. If their hearts are set on other lands and other races, and they are able to leave our soil, why then 'twice 10 good ships of stout Italian oak will build them. If they muster crews for more, the timber lies at the sea's edge. They may prescribe the number and rig, and we shall give the bronze, the labor, and the launching ways. It will content me further that 100 emissaries chosen from our best shall bring our terms and sign the pact and offer olive boughs of peace, carrying gifts, gold bars and ivory, and throne and robe insignia of our kingship. All take counsel here and now. Shore up our tired strength. Then Drances rose, belligerent as before. The fame of Turnus galled him, made him smart with envy unconfessed. This wealthy man, a lavish spender and an orator, but a cold hand in battle, held to be no empty counselor, a strong party man. His mother's nobility made him arrogant, though he had no certain father. Now he spoke to add to and to aggravate their anger. Excellency, it is all clear as day, the situation you address. No need for us to enlarge on it. All here can see they know what these events mean for our people. Oh, yet they keep silent. Let the man we know allow us liberty to speak. Let him hold his bluster. His unlucky star is baleful influence, and I shall say it, threaten as he may to run me through. His whim put out so many shining lights among our captains that we see our city founder in grief. While at the Trojan camp he skirmishes, being sure to get away, frightening the air with javelins. One more gift, your gracious majesty, include with all you'd have us send or offer to the Trojans. One gift more. Let no violence from any man prevail on you to yield a father's right, betrothal of your daughter Fittini to an exceptional son, by that eternal bond to accomplish peace. But if our minds and hearts are so oppressed by terror, let us plead with Turnus here himself to do this kindness to us all. Resign his marital rights to king and country. Why must you, sir, send into open peril time and again your suffering countrymen? You, chief of woes to Latium, cause of all? In war, there's no salvation. We require peace of you, Turnus, and along with it, the one pledge that makes peace inviolable. Look, I whom you pretend to be your rival, I will not linger on that. I, first of all, come to beg you, pity your own people. Cool your hot head, being beaten. Leave the field. In our defeat we have seen enough of death, and made a landscape desolate. If glory is on your mind still, iron self-conceit, or a royal house for dowry charms you so, then take the risk and brave the enemy. Must I suppose that for the sake of Turnus's royal marriage we poor common souls should strew the field unburied and unwept? Come, sir, if any fighting blood is in you, any native legacy from Mars, go face the man who calls you out to combat. Under this taunting, Turnus's fiery temper flared up, but he gave a groan of scorn, then broke out in his deep voice. Oh, plenty of talk. You you always have when contests call for action. Summon a senate. You are the first one there. No need to fill this hall with words. Big words you can let fly in safety, keeping walls between you and the enemy, no moats as yet running with blood. Hammer away with all your rhetoric. Say I'm afraid, when your own sword has left the dead in heaps, the field brilliant with trophies everywhere. What bravery in action can achieve you are still free to experience. No need to hunt for enemies. They ring the walls. Go out to meet them, shall we? Why hang back? Will all your skill for battle rest forever in a windbag's breath in all those flying feet? Beaten am I? Can anyone else have cause to utter that word? Beaten, you foul wretch, seeing the Tiber risen with Ilian blood, and all Evander's house, his line brought low, Arcadians killed and stripped? I should not say I seemed a beaten man to Bitias and Pandarus that giant, or the throngs I sent to hell on one victorious day, shut between the walls at that, with enemy earthworks to right and left of me. In war, there's no salvation? Sing that to your Trojan chief and your own prospects, you mad fool! Go on confusing everything with fear. Exalt a race twice conquered, and their strength. Cry down Latinus's power. Nowadays, the Myrmidons tremble at Phrygian spears. Diomedes and Achilles tremble, yes, and Alpheus' torrent flows uphill in flight from the Adriatic. Oh, take him now, pretending to be frightened when I blast him, the artful devil, just to add that touch, intimidation, to his case against me. You'll never lose that life such as it is to this right hand. Don't worry. Let it stay long resident in that tame breast of yours. Now, Father, I revert to you to your large-scale proposal. If you put no further hope in our fighting power, if we are left so unsupported, if our army corps by one reversal has gone all to pieces, our fortune reached the point of no return, then let us beg for peace with beggars' hands. Yet, oh, had we a spark of our old spirit, the luckiest of men in this hard time, the finest man to my mind, would be he who bit the dust once and for all and died, to avoid a sight like this. But if in fact we have resources, fresh reserves of men, Italian states, and people still with us, and if the Trojans won at great cost in blood, they have their burials as well, the storm struck all alike, why then give up like cowards on the threshold? Why allow our knees to shake before a trumpet blows? Days passing and the changing work of time have often righted things. Fortune returns to put on solid ground those she derided. Say the Aetolian will not help, nor Arpi, Messapus will, so will that lucky seer, Tolumnia, so will chiefs, whom many nations sent to us, and no small fame will come to the picked men of Latium and Laurentum. Yes, and Camilla of the noble Volsci, leading her cavalry splendid in bronze. But if the Trojans call on me alone for combat, and if you approve, and I am blocking something for the good of all, then victory has not so bitterly hated these hands, and so eluded them, that I should not in such a hopeful cause make my attempt. And cheerfully I'll go against him, though he overshadow Achilles and wear gear made like his by Vulcan's hands. This life of mine, I, Turnus, not outdone in valor by the men of old, have sworn in service to my father-in-law and you. Aeneas' cause and him alone. Well, call on, I pray. If this brings anger of the gods, may Dronces not appease it with his death, nor if it brings honor and feats of arms, may he bear off the palm for these. The two debated the obscure future in this way, in bitter strife. Meanwhile, Aeneas left camp and took the field. Now see a messenger hastening through the palace with hue and cry to alarm the town. He brought word that the Trojan battle line and the Tuscan complement had left the Tiber to move down the plain. Their minds in tumult shaken by the news, the common people felt their anger roused as by a goad. With oaths their hands went out for arms, and then the young men yelled, "To arms!" even as their despondent fathers wept. Everywhere now clamor and discord rose into the air above the town, as when bird flocks come down in a tall grove, or swans, where the Padusan channel teems with fish, give their hoarse-throated cries on echoing pools. But Turnus caught the moment and made it his. He said, "Ha! Just so, my townsmen! Hold your counsel! Sit! Praise the name of peace! And their army sweeps to attack our capital!" That was all. He leapt up and away, quitting the council hall with rapid stride, then gave commands. "Volsus, it's for you to make the Volscian squadrons arm. You lead the Rutulians. Messapus, arm your horsemen. Coras, you and your twin brother see our cavalry deployed across the plain. 1-foot battalion reinforce the approaches to the city and man the towers. All the rest prepare with me for action, as and where I order." Running crowds made for the city walls, and King Latinus, prey to the dark hour, left the council chamber and postponed all he had set afoot. Bitterly now he blamed himself for having failed to welcome Aeneas the Dardanian to his realm as son-in-law. Before the city gates, deep pits were dug, big stones and pikes brought up. A vibrant trumpet sang bloodshed and war. In long uneven lines, mothers and boys appeared atop the ring of walls. The final effort drew them all. The queen as well rode in her carriage with a company of mothers to the shrine of Pallas high above the town with gifts, and close beside her the young princess Lavinia rode, the cause of so much suffering, lovely eyes downcast. The women entering beclouded all that shrine with smoke of incense, and sad voices rose from the portal in a tide of prayer. O power over battle, our protectress, Virgin Tritonia, shatter in thy hand the spear haft of the Phrygian corsair. Throw him headlong to earth, let him lie dead below our high gates. Turnus, furiously on edge for battle, pulled his armor on, first his cuirass glowing red, with scales a-quiver. Then he encased his legs in gold, his head still bare. He then belted on his sword and ran down from the citadel, his figure glittering golden, while his heart beat high, at grips with foemen even now in thought, as a stallion breaks his tether and goes free, at last out of the stall and down the meadow, gaining the open land. There he may turn to a grazing herd of mares, or canter on to a stream he knows well for a cooling plunge, neighing and frisking, tossing back his head, his mane at play over his neck and shoulders. Square in his path, her Volscian squads behind her, Camilla came, hard-riding warrior queen. Before the gates she leapt down from her mount, and her whole troop, taking the cue, dismounted, at the same instant slipping to the earth. She spoke then, saying, Turnus, as confidence goes hand in hand with bravery that earned it, now I dare and undertake to meet Aeneas's horsemen, charging the Tuscan cavalry alone. Let me first risk the combat at close quarters. You with your infantry stand by the walls, meanwhile, and guard the city. His eyes intent upon the awesome virgin, Turnus answered, Virgin, glory of Italy, how tell my gratitude, or how repay my debt? Courageous spirit, towering above all here, now share the toil with me. Rumor, confirmed by scouts I send, informs me that dog Aeneas dispatches his light-armed horse ahead to scour the plain, while on the mountain track through the wild land, crossing the ridge, he makes his own descent upon the town, all set in ambush where the path is arched by forest soldiers to close both ends of the defile. You take the field, engage the Tuscan horse. Messapus and the Latin cavalry will be there with you and Tiburtus's troop. Plan your battle as my co-commander. With corresponding orders he dispatched Messapus with his Latins to that fight, while he himself marched on his enemy. The mountain road curves in a pass designed by nature for entrapment and surprise. Heavily wooded, dark on either hand, the road thins out here, and the narrowing gorge begrudges a way through. But on high ground, amid the lookout posts along the crest, there's a concealed plateau, a safe retreat, whether you plan a rush from right or left, or stand fast on the ridge and roll down boulders. Here, by familiar shortcuts, Turnus came, preempted the high ground, and lay in wait in woods made dangerous. In heaven, meanwhile, Diana spoke to Alpis, the fleet huntress, one of the divine virgins in her train. Her lips opened in sadness, and she said, Sister, now Camilla goes her way to the cruel war, equipped with bow and quiver, weapons of ours. But all in vain. Cherish her, as I may beyond the rest. No new love this, come just now to Diana, moving my heart with pleasure. Years ago, when haters of his insolent power drove him out of Privernum, ancient realm and town, Metabus took along his infant child in flight amid the struggles of that war to share his exile. By her mother's name, Casmilla, changed a bit, he called the child Camilla. Now he carried her before him close to his breast, and toiled for refuge on long ridges in the wilderness, though spears of grim pursuit were everywhere behind, and Volscian patrols cast a wide net. Lo, and behold, square in his path in flood, the torrent Amasenus, foaming high, ran over banks and brim, filled by so wild a cloudburst. As the man prepared to swim it, love for his infant stayed him, and he feared for his dear burden. Weighing all the choices possible, he settled suddenly and desperately on this. In his tough hand he chanced to carry a battle spear of oak, knotted and seasoned. Now to this he tied his child encased in cork tree bark, and bound her trimly in the middle of the shaft. He balanced it in his big hand, and prayed to the air of heaven, "Daughter of Latona, Diana, kindly virgin of the groves, I, her father, swear this child shall be thy servant. The first weapon she embraces thine, as by thy mercy through the air she escapes the enemy. I beg thee, goddess, take her as thine own, this girl committed now to the veering wind." Then he drew back his arm and let the spun shaft fly. The waters dinned below, and over the rushing stream, small and forlorn Camilla soared across upon the whistling spear shaft. Well aware of troops in force approaching from behind, Metabus took to the river. Spear and child in triumph he recovered from the turf, his offering to the Virgin of the crossroads. Now not a city gave him sanctuary, public or private, nor would he himself, because of his fierce nature, yield to any. So he lived out his life upon the shepherd's lonely mountains. Here in undergrowth, amid rough haunts of beasts, he nursed his daughter, putting her to the breast of a wild mare, whose teats he milked into her tender mouth. When the small child took her first steps, he armed her hands with a sharp javelin, and hung a bow and quiver from her infant shoulder. No gold headband, no flowing outer garment covered her, but a tiger's skin hung down her back from head to foot, and as a child she flung play darts from her soft hand, and whirled a sling stone on a strap around her head to fell a crane of Strymon or a swan. Then many mothers in the Tuscan towns desired her in vain to be their daughter. All her contentment being with Diana, the girl remained untouched and ever cherished passion for arms and for virginity. I wish that she had not been swept away in this campaign, or tried to challenge Trojans. She would be my dear, one of my sisters. Come, though, granted harsh fate is at hand, go gliding out of heaven, nymph, and visit Latin lands, where, with unlucky omen, battle is begun. Here, take my weapons, take one vengeful shaft out of the quiver. By this let any Trojan or Italian, one or the other, who may violate her sacred body with a wound, pay back, in blood, an equal penalty to me. Then I shall carry, pillowed in a cloud, the body of the pitiable one, her war gear intact, to her final rest in her own land and tomb. When she had finished, Apis dropped from heaven through light airs with a rushing sound, wrapped in a dark whirlwind. The Trojan column now approached the town, with Tuscan chiefs and all their cavalry in numbered squadrons. Over the level ground, with thudding hoofs, the war horse trots and snorts and rears up, tugging at the check of rein, and curvets here and there. The wide, steel-glinting field bristles with lances. The long vista teems with upright arms. Against them soon Messapus and the headlong Latin horse, Coras, his brother, and Camilla's wing came into view, defenders in the field, with lances drawn back, then in forward thrusts, and with a brandishing of javelins. The onward rush of men and horses neighing blazed in the sunlight. When they came within one spear throw of one another, Trojan and Latin pulled up in a halt. Then all at once with shouts they spurred their furious mounts and flung their javelins in showers from both sides, as thick as snowflakes, making a daytime dusk. Now shaft to shaft, Tyrrhenus and the savage Latin horseman Aconteus met head-on, with a mighty crash that caused the first downfall from shock of horses, breast to bursting breast. Aconteus pitched off like a thunderbolt or stone out of a catapult, came down far off, his life dispersed into the air. At this their lines disordered Latin troopers turned and, tossing shields behind their shoulders, rode off toward the town. Asilas led the Trojan squadrons in pursuit. But then, when near the walls, again the Latins shouted, yanked the horses' yielding necks about, and wheeled to fight. Now Trojans fled in turn at a full gallop, as in full retreat, just as the sea with alternating rush now runs ashore in foam above the ledges and lapping soaks the sand high on the beach, now in rapid seething ebb recedes and glides from land and pulls the rolling pebbles. Twice the Tuscans drove the Rutulians headlong to the walls, but thrown back twice they fled, glancing behind, their shoulders covered. Now, when they came together a third time, the two formations mingled man to man, and then indeed groans of the dying rose, then arms and bodies in a mire of blood went down, and dying horses with their riders butchered as the bitter fight surged on. Orsilochus, in dread of meeting Remulus, hurled his javelin at the other's mount, and left the steel point under its ear. At this the war horse reared in fury, forelegs high, to shake the wound away with towering chest, and Remulus was thrown to earth. Catillus brought down Iolaus, then Herminius, great-souled, great-bodied warrior, his bare head flowing with tawny locks, his shoulders bare. Wounds held no terrors for him, great as he was, fighting uncovered, but the driven lance a quiver passed clean through his shoulder's breadth, and made him double up in agony. Dark blood spilt everywhere, men dealt out death by cold steel as they fought and strove by wounds to win the beauty of courageous death. Amid the carnage, like an Amazon, Camilla rode exultant, one breast bared for fighting ease, her quiver at her back. At times she flung slim javelins thick and fast, at times tireless caught up her two-edged axe. The golden bow, Diana's weapon, rang upon her shoulders. Yes, when she gave ground, forced to retreat, with bow unslung in flight, she turned and aimed her arrows. At her side rode chosen comrades, virgins all, Larina, Tulla, Tarpeia, shaking her bronze axe. These were the girls of Italy that she, divine Camilla, picked out to be her pride, her staunch handmaidens, both in peace and war. So ride the hardened Amazons of Thrace with drumming hooves on frozen Thermodon, warring in winter in their painted gear, sometimes around Hippolyta, the chieftain, or when the daughter of Mars, Penthesilea drives her chariot back victorious, and women warriors bearing crescent shields exult, riding in tumult with wild cries. Savage girl, whom did your lance unhorse? What victims first and last? How many thrown down on the battlefield, torn bodies dying? Aeneas, Clytius' son, came first. He faced her with unarmored breast, and with her shaft of pine she ran him through. He tumbled, coughing streams of blood, took bites of bloody earth, and dying writhed on his wound. Then she brought Liris down, then Pagasus. Liris, his mount stabbed under him, spun off, and tried to gather up the reins. Pagasus, coming to help, put out his hand, unarmed, and both alike went down. She sent to join them Hippotas' son, Amastrus. At a distance, pressing on with couched lance, she rode after Tereus, Harpalycus, Demophoon, and Chromis. And for every javelin she twirled and cast, a Phrygian trooper fell. Still out of range, Ornytus, a hunter, rode a Iapygian horse in strange war gear, his broad shoulders covered by bullock's hide, his head by huge wolf's muzzle gaping wide with gleaming fangs. In his right hand he held a forester's bladed hunting spear. This man now wheeled about, the tallest by a head amid his company. But soon Camilla caught him from behind, no effort there, since all were in retreat, and ran him through. Then, from above, heart full of hate, she said, "In forests were you, Tuscan, flushing game? The day has come when boasts of all your kind are proven wrong by women under arms. You'll take no light fame to your father's shades, to have been killed by the lance head of Camilla." She killed next two of the very tallest Trojans, Orsilochus and Butes. Butes' head being turned, she put her lance head in the gap between his helm and cuirass, where the neck showed white, above the shield on the left arm. Then, running as Orsilochus gave chase in a wide circuit, tricking him, she closed a narrowing ring till she became pursuer. Then to her full height risen, drove her axe repeatedly through helm and through bone, as the man begged and begged her to show mercy. Warm brains came from his head wound and wetted his face. One who came upon her at that moment reined in, taken aback at the sudden sight, the son of Aunus, Apennine mountaineer. Not the least guileful of Ligurians this man was, while fate allowed him guile. Seeing he could not spur away from combat, could not deflect the queen from her attack, resorting to a cunning ruse, he said, "What's so remarkable if, to a girl's taste, your mainstay is your horse? No running away. Take me on, hand to hand on level ground. Get ready for a fight on foot and learn whose blown-up vanity will have a fall." Now, bitter anger made her burn at this. She gave a friend her mount and faced the man fearlessly on foot with equal arms, a naked blade, a shield without device. But he who thought his ruse had worked rode off without a pause, reining his mount around, goading him into a run with iron spurs. "Ligurian fool, too cocksure much too soon! Your slippery native trickery has failed. No chance it will return you in your skin to Aunus, the old deceiver." So the girl called out, as in a sprint with lightning pace, she came abreast and passed the running horse, then wheeled and yanked the reins and met the shock of the Ligurian's onset, making him pay her penalty in hated blood. So easily a falcon, sacred bird, from his rock tower will strike a soaring dove high in a cloud, and grip her as he tears her viscera with crooked talons. Blood and plucked out feathers fall from the sky. But on that scene, the Father of gods and men kept no indifferent watch from his aerial seat high on Olympus. He roused the Tuscan Tarchon to the melee, instilling anger in him far from mild, so that amid the carnage, where the companies of horse were giving way, Tarchon rode out, with one shout or another rallying the left and right wings, calling men by name, putting new fight into routed cavalry. Incapable of shame, poltroons forever! Tuscans, what is this fright? What cowardice has entered into you? Shall a single woman drive you out of line, break your formations? What do we carry swords for? Why hold on to useless lances? None of you is tame when it comes to making love, bed wars at night, or when a flute preludes the dance of Bacchus. Look for a feast and cups on laden tables. All you care for, all you're keen for, yes, when some dependable reader of the entrails heralds an offering and a fatted lamb is calling you into the sacred wood. With this he gave rein to his mount, prepared to face death. He is well in the battle's heart, and straight for Venulus went storming on. With his right arm he swept him from the saddle, hugging him to his chest, and spurring hard, with a great effort lugged the man away. A yell went up to heaven as all the Latins turned to watch, and like a streak of lightning Tarchon with his load of man and weapons flew over open ground. Then he broke off the steel point of the enemy lance and groped for an opening where he could wound and kill him. But fighting back, the other warded off the hand aimed at his throat, met force with force, as when a golden eagle flapping skyward bears a snake as prey, her feet entwined, but holding fast with talons, while the victim, wounded as it is, coils and uncoils, and lifts cold, grisly scales, and towers up with hissing maw. But all the same the eagle strikes the wrestler snake with crooked beak, while beating with her wings the air of heaven. Just so, out of the Latin squadron, Tarchon, triumphing, bore off his prey. And Tuscans, heeding the example their captain gave, his daring that came off, at once attacked. One Auruns, a man marked by fate, rode wide around Camilla, javelin at the ready, waiting his chance, ahead of her in cunning. Wherever in the melee the girl rode in her wild forays, Auruns kept behind, silently stalking her. When she drew back, blooded from the enemy, he drew rein in stealth and swung his nimble mount away. Now this way, looking for an opening, now that. He shadowed her, going about a circuit on all sides, the dangerous man, a dead shot, hefting clear his pointed shaft. By chance, Chloreus, Mount Cybeleus' votary, once a priest, came shining from far off in Phrygian gear. He spurred a foaming mount in a saddle-cloth of hide, with scales of bronze as thick as plumage, interlinked with gold. The man himself, splendid in rust and purple out of the strange east, drew a Lycian bow to shoot Gortinian arrows. At his shoulder golden was the bow, and golden too the helmet of the seer, and tawny gold the brooch that pinned his cloak as it belled out and snapped in wind, a chlamys crocus yellow. Tunic and trousers too, both Eastern style, were brilliant with embroidery. Camilla began to track this man, her heart's desire, either to fit luxurious Trojan gear on a temple door, or else herself to flaunt that golden plunder, blindly as a huntress following him and him alone. Of all who took part in the battle, she rode on through a whole scattered squadron, recklessly, in a girl's love of finery. Now at length from where he lurked, seeing the time had come, Aruns went into action, letting his javelin come alive, and prayed aloud to heaven, "Supreme God, holy Soracte's guardian, above all others we are blessed in thee, for whom the pine ship's glowing pile is fed. Assured by our devotion in thy cult, we step through beds of embers without harm. Mighty Apollo, grant that we wipe out with arms this ignominy. I want no spoils, no trophy of a beaten girl. My actions elsewhere will bring me honor. May this dire scourge of battle perish when hit by me. Then to the cities of my ancestors, with no pretense of glory, I'll return." Phoebus heard, and felt disposed to grant his prayer in part. The rest he gave the winds to blow away. Granted, Aruns should fell Camilla in the shock of death. Denied that Aruns' land should see the man returned. That plea the gale winds wafted to the south. So when the javelin whistled from his hand, the Volscians, to a man fiercely intent, looked toward their queen, oblivious of the air around her, of the whistling shaft, the weapon gliding from high heaven. She remained until the javelin swooped and thudded home beneath her naked breast. There, driven deep, the shaft drank the girl's blood. In consternation, fellow troopers gathered on the run to catch and hold their captain as she dropped. But Aruns on the instant galloped off in a daze, in fearful joy. He put no further trust in his lance, nor in himself, to meet the warrior girl in arms, just as a wolf who killed a shepherd or a full-grown steer makes off cross-country for the hills to hide before the arrows chase him, knowing well his kill was reckless, tail curved down between his legs to his quaking belly. Off he goes. Just so, Aruns in panic made himself scarce, well out of it amid a crowd of horsemen. Dying, Camilla tugged at the javelin, but the steel point between the ribs held fast in the deep wound. She drooped from loss of blood, her eyelids drooped, chill with approaching death, and the fresh glow of youth drained from her cheeks. With halting breath she whispered now to Acca, one of her company, equally young, her confidant, most faithful of them all, and said, "Until now, sister, I was able. Now this wound galls me and finishes me. Everything around is growing dark. Make your escape and take my last command to Turnus, that here he join the battle, here to keep the Trojans from the town. Farewell." Even while speaking, she let slip the reins and slid fainting to earth. Little by little, growing cold, the girl detached herself from her whole body and put down her head, death's captive now, upon her strengthless neck, and let her weapons fall. Then with a groan for that indignity, her spirit fled into the gloom below. Now spreading measureless, a shout went up to strike the golden stars. Camilla gone! The fight became more savage. Massed for battle, Trojans in all their force pressed on, with Tuscan captains and the Arcadians of Evander. As for the sentinel of Diana, Opis, resting all this time on a mountain top, she had been watching without fear, but now she sighted far off in the furious din of cavalries Camilla beaten down and pitifully dead. Then from her heart the nymph said, groaning, "Oh, it is too cruel, girl, your punishment, too cruel for having tried to challenge Trojans in the war. Devotion paid to Diana in your solitude in the wild wood, our arrows on your shoulder, did not avail you. Yet your queen has left you not without honor at the hour of death. Nor will your end be unrenowned among earth's peoples, nor will it be known as unavenged. Whoever dare to pierce your body impiously pays with his life, and justly." On a mount in a mountain's shade, the ancient king Dercannus of Laurentum had an ilex-darkened massive tomb. Here, with an easy spring most beautiful, the goddess mounted and looked down on Aruns. Seeing him bright in arms and puffed with pride, "Why turn aside?" she said. "Step this way. Come and perish here. Enjoy the fit reward Camilla brings. You wretch, will even you die by Diana's arrows?" Then she picked a feathered shaft out of the gilded quiver and, taking deadly aim, drew the bow back full circle till the tips could almost meet. Her hands aligned, the left hand felt the point, the right hand and taut bowstring touched her breast. All in one instant Aruns heard the arrow whistle in the ripped air, and the arrowhead thud in his body. As he moaned and died, his fellow troopers rode off unaware, and left him in the dust, a spot unknown on the wide terrain. Opis, taking wing, went soaring to the high Olympian air. Now first to leave the field, their mistress lost, were Camilla's light-armed cavalry. Then routed Rutulians made off, and fierce Atinas. Captains torn from squadrons, troops astray, wheeled toward the town and looked for safety there. No one at all could hold or make a stand with javelins against the Trojan onset. Bows were unstrung on slumping shoulders, galloping hooves shook up the loose, dry mire of the field. A dusky cloud of churned-up dust rolled on to the city walls, where mothers on the towers, with beaten breasts, lifted their women's cry to the stars of heaven. Hard on the heels of men, first breaking through the open gates, a crowd of enemy pressed, or men of both sides mingled, so there was no escape from piteous death. But in the very entry, amid the walls of their own city, their protecting houses, lanced from behind, they gave up life and breath. Then, after some had shut the gates, they dared not open a way in for their friends, or take them into the town, beg as they would. Now came a wretched slaughter, as the gate's defenders shot at the crowd that rushed upon their shots. Kept out before the eyes of weeping parents, some of those borne onward in the rout plunged headlong in the moat, and others rode in blind panic to batter at the gates, unyielding, barred against them. On the walls, even older women, mothers, as true love of homeland taught them, and as they had seen Camilla fight, outdid each other now at hurling missiles with unsteady hands, in place of steel, hard oaken balks, and pikes with fire-hardened points. For their town wall they dared, they burned, to be the first to die. In the mountain wood, meanwhile, the cruel news filled Turnus' thoughts, as Acca brought him word of the great tumult. Volscian troops destroyed, Camilla fallen, foes in Mars' good graces carrying all before them, riding on, panic already at the city walls. Raging as Jove's hard will required, Turnus left the heights that he had manned and left the rough wood. Hardly was he out of sight and holding level ground when Lord Aeneas entered the pass, unguarded now, and crossed the ridge and issued from the woodland shade. Then both, with no time lost, marched on the city, two whole hosts, not many miles apart. Aeneas viewed the plain smoking with dust far off, and saw the army of Laurentum. Turnus, at the same time, recognized Aeneas, pitiless captain in the field, and heard the tramp of feet, the neigh of horses coming behind. In moments they would skirmish, go to the test of battle. Had not reddened Phoebus already dipped his weary team in the Spanish sea, and, as the bright day ebbed, brought on the night? One army strengthened walls, the other encamped in quiet before the town.